energy. Remember that from nutrition. What are the essential? What makes them special? Right, we have to eat these. These, we make these from these. So we use these backbones to make these. So these we have to eat. Now let's look closely at what an amino acid looks like. A little bit. Look at that. All right. Notice that one end, the amino part of amino acid, the amino part has a nitrogen in it. Notice that nitrogen. Let's really look at that molecule so we can see what's going to happen to it. So the amine part of amino acid has a nitrogen. The acid part is over here. It's called a carboxyl group. It's COOH. So this part is all making up the acid part. And then there's the rest of the molecule, that R. The R is just representing the rest, which is different for these 20. So all 20 have this same thing. All of them have this. And then what makes each of the 20 different is this last bit. So you have to look at that. All right, the first thing, transamination, how we get non-essential amino acids out of the essential ones. There's your subtitle for that slide. We just transfer the amine group from the one amino acid to an organic acid and make it a new amino acid. We're using an enzyme, transaminase. We're using vitamin B6 as the coenzyme. So here's glutamic acid. Now see, here's the amine group. Here's the carboxyl group. We just swap them. We just transfer. And when we transfer, now we have a new amino acid. So that's how we get glutamic acid becomes aspartic acid, by just swapping the amine group with the carboxyl group on another acid. And then we look at this one. Here's glutamic acid. We want to make alanine out of it. So we just swap the amine group with the carboxyl group. And then we wind up with alpha-ketogluteric acid as a byproduct, and we have alanine as our new amino acid. So transaminase is just how we get a different amino acid from the amino acids we eat. Alpha-ketogluteric acid, look, there it is, in the midst of the citric acid cycle. That's going to become important in a minute. All right, now, how do we use them for energy? So first we break down our proteins. Not desirable. We'd prefer to break down fat. Proteins have a lot of other jobs. Protein's job is not to be energy storage. Protein has a ton of other jobs to do. But if we are fasting, we will turn particularly muscle, skeletal muscle, into energy if we have to. So the first thing we have to do is we take off the amine group, called deaminate. Then we take the acid that's left, run it through the citric acid cycle.
Can you say that again?
So we pull off the amine group, and then the acid that's left, that's now energy. We can run it through the citric acid cycle. We can convert it to glucose if we want to. We could even turn it into fat. Those of you who go with a high protein diet with this idea that you're going to build muscle, no, you're building fat. So if you are eating a high protein diet, drinking the protein shakes, it gets turned into fat instead. Now we do have to have some protein to build muscle if you're trying to be the power lifter. Yeah, you do have to have some protein, but typically the person that's doing that is eating way more protein than is needed. And so it's handled just like donuts. It's put right in your hips,
So
or your belly.
Is that what made the Atkins diet fail? Some of the high protein.
Well, what the Atkins diet failed was the high fat. It clogs coronary arteries, and then you die of a heart attack.
Right.
But well, the idea of the Atkins diet was to put you on a high fat diet, which put you into the state of ketosis,
Right.
which makes you nauseated. Ketosis makes you nauseated.
Right.
So then you don't want to eat as much. That's how the Atkins diet was envisioned to work. But what wound up happening, all those food manufacturers said, oh, here's a new trend. Let's make low-carb foods to appeal to dieters' palates. And now suddenly you had an incredible array of wonderful, tasty food again. It wasn't just eating butter every day. Right. And so then you're struggling to lose weight again because you have the full palette of wonderful things to eat that are all low carb. You know, just like in the 70s, 80s, they went low fat. So Hershey syrup proudly posts fat-free. Yeah, that's why, you know, peppermint patty is a low-fat food. High in sugar. Okay. We transfer the amine part, we pop it off, and then we take the acid and we run it through the citric acid cycle. So I'll show you that in a second. Here's the amine group that's left. The amine group, NH2, quickly becomes NH3. Does anyone know what NH3 is by any chance? This is ammonia. NH3 is ammonia. Ammonia is toxic to the nervous system. It needs to be removed. So the liver turns it into urea. So there's our nitrogens. And then where does urea go? Notice it's yellow. Into the urine. Yeah, that's what urea, urine. That's where the word came from. So the amino acid is broken apart. The ammonia becomes urea. It's peed out. What's left is going to become energy, and I'll show you that in just a second. What I want to pause is to look at end-stage liver failure. So the liver's job is to turn the ammonia into urea. The liver has enormous numbers of jobs, and when it fails, as I often saw in ICU, we got the end-stage alcoholic, end-stage drug user, and the end-stage cigarette smoker, too, but that's a different topic. Because of all the functions that the liver has, the liver is no longer doing them. So it's no longer breaking down the red blood cells to handle the incredible amount of bilirubin. So the bilirubin's going into the skin, turns the person pumpkin orange, and it itches a lot. They are building up fluid because the blood vessels are blocked off and they're not producing protein anymore. They're not producing albumin. So fluid is building up in their belly. It's called ascites, and that's why this guy looks really pregnant, although that's actually fluid. But then the real issue has to do with not being able to break down protein and turn it into urea. It's left as ammonia. The ammonia is toxic to the nervous system and has to be removed, or, oh, that's right, this thing is turned on, more than turned on. Do it this way. They will get a type of flapping tremor when they have high ammonia levels. You can see that woman's hands, she can't hold her hands out straight because of high ammonia levels.
Is that from alcohol? Is that from
Liver failure of any sort.
Oh, okay.
Liver failure of any sort. So, you know, alcohol is a primary one, but it's not the only one.
My dad, he's alcoholic. My dad's an alcoholic. He has a really hard time keeping his hands like straight. He has to like keep them. And I know it's from alcohol because it has.
Well, that sounds more like calcium issues. If he's having cramps in his fingers.
Yeah, he gets like where he gets cramps, but he drinks. That's all he does is drink.
And does it make him happy? No, it doesn't. You know, it's like, really? You drink to be happy, but you're not. That's a whole other story, isn't it? All right, one of the liver's jobs, and the way I usually saw them in ICU, one of the liver's jobs is to clot blood, produce the clotting factors. So again, we're not going to produce clotting factors. That means we're going to bleed easily. So the end-stage alcoholic has varicose veins in their esophagus. They're called esophageal varices, is the official name. All right, they don't clot, so these are going to rupture in the esophagus, and then there's going to be massive GI bleeding. And we're talking vomiting blood, and then blood going through the GI tract, which turns black as it's being digested. So now they're, pardon me, shedding, foul-smelling, sticky, black, tarry stools. All right, what's in blood? Protein. So now their protein levels are going up, which means their ammonia levels are going up. And so besides the vomiting blood, all right, that's the medical emergency. They're going to bleed to death. So then all this effort goes into stopping the bleeding and replenishing their blood. Then we have to deal, as nurses, we would have to deal with all the blood in their gut. So that meant giving them lactulose, which is a sugar that pulls water into the gut, giving them lactulose enemas and putting lactulose down the NG tube. And so then they would wind up with massive diarrhea that starts out black, and it's really foul smelling. And so we would put gauze, 4x4 gauze with a little peppermint oil, and tape them around the room. And for the longest time, when I would open a bottle of peppermint oil, I would suddenly be thinking about GI bleed. It's like I couldn't separate the two smells. All right, massive quantities of diarrhea. That means that very low pH diarrhea. It is stripping the skin off their butt. So the night shift nurse, this would be our job. Oh goodness, pretty rude, but it works. You roll them over on their side, put that leg up, tape their butt cheeks open with tape all the way to the bed rail. Put a heat lamp on their butt to try to dry that out. And you do that for like 20 minutes. And then put all this Decidin ointment all over it. And then lots of towels, because you kind of shits more, to try to catch it. And so that's what I did all night. Once you got their life saved, then it was dealing with this all night. And then as soon as they got out of the hospital, where do you think they went? To the bar, to the liquor store. And we would continue to see them again in a few months, and we'd see them again in a few months. Anyway.
You would think after experiencing that one time that they would never want to have to do that again.
You would think. Think about that.
Yeah, my dad was a critical care nurse and lost his life